Hello, sinners, and hail Sappho. It's your hostess with the mostest, Narcissa DeVille. If you're new to this channel, hi, hello, welcome. We've been expecting you. We do weekly Good Omens content here, and we are on episode 6, the review. I'm actually, I gotta say, so this is our second time recording this, unfortunately. What's funny though is that, we didn't have any notes the first time we did it. And we actually did really, really well. So I'm hoping we can do just as well and that I have not forgotten anything in the minutes it's been
Since we realized.
just in general. I'm hoping that I will have remembered everything still and that will be just as fresh and funny as always.
Fresh and funny. Not the fact that you forgot to
No,
introduce me.
I know. Oh, God. Hello. Who are you? You haven't been here before. Come on now. I didn't get around to it yet.
Your co-host.
Hey, yes, my co-hostess with the mostest, Mother DeVille.
Hello.
As always. How are you? Besides,
annoyed?
Yeah, annoyed that we're doing this again. So anyway, if this is just a podcast, you will know that for whatever reason, my iPhone just didn't record this, and I don't know why for the second time, but I at least recorded separate audio this time. So we're going to have something some way or another. So yeah, this is episode 6, which is wild because it does kind of feel like it was just yesterday that we started this project.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the last episode. Obviously, this one kind of is a continuation from episode 5. They're still doing the whole fight of the demons at the bookshop. And I love that, this what I think is kind of funny is like now with the symbol on the floor, the devil's trap or whatever you want to call it, Aziraphale is using electric candles because he had a whole situation, obviously, where the bookshop burned down. And so he's terrified of that happening again, even though technically he was not there for it, but he knew about it. And so I guess it clearly like holds some kind of emotional thing for him. And it is funny because I think it was Nina who was like, why? Like, what's with the fake candles?
Yeah.
And
flameless.
He's like, well, there's a lot of paper around here and it can go up. And then he just gets this look in his face like, I don't want to remember it.
Chills.
Yeah, fully. And so, but it still works, which I think is kind of cool. I like the idea that that still worked. They still got it up. And so, of course, they are kind of just trying to figure out what to do about the whole demon situation. But technically, they can't come in yet.
Yes.
But they are taunting Nina and Maggie, and it's mostly Shax who is taunting them.
Even talking about when she talks about, and she's saying you're so unlovable.
Yeah, she's
just
really being
going
a bitch
to the core.
Yeah, she's really being a bit, and it's kind of weird because it's like her character has been kind of like silly and clueless the whole time, and now to see her just be like a real asshole, you're like, wow, that came out of left field. Like, you've been sitting on this one, girl? Like, okay. So yeah, no, I agree. It's very like mean-spirited, and obviously that's the point. She's a demon, whatever, fine. I love though that Maggie kind of is like, I'm not taking your bullshit. I'm not afraid of you.
Even when Nina's trying to go, don't mess. And
yeah.
I was so proud of Maggie.
Yes,
she really came into her own.
Yes.
Her character just flourished right there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it was I think it's a good moment for Maggie. I think it's kind of cute. Again, like you said, I love how Nina's like, don't antagonize them. Let's just, and Maggie's like, no, I've been scared all my life. I'm not about to be scared of this, which is an interesting little line drop. I would love to see what that's about, where that goes, what that meant. Did she come from a rough home? Like, I'm so curious what all that meant. But I love that she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I am not going to be afraid of them. I'm not going to let this stop me. I am going to, stand up for myself and you, and also Aziraphale, because, I care about him, clearly.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sweet. But of course, she does make the mistake that one does when she's like, hey, you want to come in here and say that to my face? Unfortunately, demons run on vampire rules, which is that they do have to be invited in someplace. And so technically she has invited them in. And I love that, like, they have to test the water. So of course, Shax gets Eric to do it and like kind of pushes him in to see if he's going to die. And then when he doesn't, they're like, okay, we can do this. And Maggie and Nina are like, oh, fuck. And Aziraphale's like, what did you just do? Maggie's like, I think I might have invited them in. And he's like, okay, everybody up the stairs, get around the circle. Like, we got to go. So he does kind of threaten the demons. I do love that he's like, hey, look, turn back and nobody gets hurt. And so Eric is like, okay, he turns back around. And then, of course, Shax blows him up. And she's like, yeah, you'll be hurt. She's like, don't fuck with me. Do not listen to him because he is not the only threat here, which I do think is really super funny as as scenes go, even if it's a little like silly. So of course, he's the one that gets blown up because there's plenty more where he came from. So it's fine. But also, obviously, in this moment too, we have the demons who are kind of like tiptoeing along. They go to the edge of this thing and end up getting discorporated, and then they just keep doing it. And I love that, Nina's like, what is going on? Like, why does this keep happening? And Aziraphale's trying to explain it. And she just goes, does what you say make sense in your head? I think that is the funniest line.
That
I
is
just
funny.
love that. She's like, does what you say make sense in your head? I honestly, I need, that is like my own personal like mantra sometimes. Like, does what you say
Yeah.
make sense in your head?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even know
But
what the
that's
fuck
a
I'm
writer,
talking about. That's true. Yeah. And then there is a few scenes, I think, where we go to heaven. We see Muriel and Crowley up in heaven.
Yeah.
At first he has his usual look, and Muriel's like, you look like you don't belong here. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And Crowley's like, well, angels are just like bees. You just have to blend in and nobody's any the wiser. He changes his appearance. He's got the like gold tracksuit. He's got the little gold tooth.
Is
gold
it just
nails.
me, or does it seem a little 60s inspired?
It is very 60s inspired. It's very, it's campy. I'll say that.
Very.
I love that.
Or like you say, your puppetry.
Muppetry.
Muppetry.
Yeah. It's very
Muppety.
Yes.
That's it.
He's
Muppety.
very Muppety in this scene. I love that for some reason, being an angel, it seems like his hair got longer, and he's also got like a headband in. It's a whole
so cute.
It's a whole moment. It's a look.
Oh,
anyway,
it's a look.
Yeah. And I love that he's just kind of like muppeting around, following after Muriel. And he's like, hey, you lead the way. You know where the fuck we're going. Lead the way. And of course, I love that they do end up walking past Michael and Uriel. And at first, Michael's like, do I know you? But she just keeps on walking. And he's
Ding
like,
dong.
you didn't catch me.
Yeah.
Get it? Like, so we go back to the bookshop. They're still kind of dealing with the demons. Shax does figure out, like, okay, enough. Too many of you have gotten blown up. This clearly isn't working. They end up knocking over one of the bookshelves, which covers the little sigil on the ground enough to where they can get over it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Nina, Maggie, and Aziraphale have to figure out another way to deal with this. So they start by using fire extinguishers, which doesn't really seem to do much. It seems like it makes the stair, because the stairs
slippery
are like metal, so it makes them slippery, so they kind of fall. But it doesn't stop them in any way. Then they start throwing the fire extinguishers. That doesn't work. So finally, when they're up the stairs, Nina's like, okay, we need to start throwing books. And Aziraphale's like, I wish you wouldn't. And she's like, well, what about the encyclopedias? Nothing fiction, obviously, which I think is funny. And I feel like Aziraphale's like, you don't understand what this bookshop is, do you? Like, we don't have a lot of fiction here, ma'am. This is like antique books.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, let's start with the encyclopedias. It's all online. And he's like, okay, I guess. And they just start throwing them, and he is losing his fucking mind. He's screaming, probably almost in tears. Like, he is not happy about the situation. And of course, that ultimately doesn't end up really working either. Nothing's going to hold them back for long. And so they're going to have to find another way to go about this. But first, we see Crowley and Muriel in heaven again. Muriel kind of shows to him, like, this is the file I have on Gabriel, but I can't open it. You have to be a certain clearance level. And when I first saw this scene, I kind of thought the joke was going to be like, they're making it too complicated. All you have to do is just open it, because he just opens it. But it ended up being where he's like, yeah, I wasn't always a demon. They never changed their passwords, which, like, as you said, is kind of just an office joke at this point. Like, lots of companies just don't change their passwords, or their passwords are like password. So, it's like, whatever. It was pretty easy. I feel like heaven is cocky enough to make their password. They give that energy. But I know at some points Rackville catches them, and she's like, wow, Muriel, you're the last person I expected to be working with the enemy. And I love that Muriel's like, I do see where this could look bad on me. I think that's so funny. And for whatever reasons, Rackville's just like, fuck it. Like, don't stop on my account. Might as well. You're already here. Yeah. I find that very odd. Mm-hmm. I do love, though, that Seracriel's like, oh, Crowley, you and I work together on the Horsehead Nebula. And he's like, I meet a lot of people. He could never remember
and, and
anyone.
they get so mad
Yeah,
too.
he has one brain cell. It's Aziraphale shaped, and that is all he can remember.
That's
Nothing else. Yeah,
everything.
nothing else is sticking in that
Yeah,
mind. Like it's gone. I do think that's
that's
funny.
funny.
I don't know. Are snakes known for having bad memories?
I don't know.
That would be a funny little tidbit, wouldn't it? Like snakes are just have bad memories, so Crowley has a bad memory, I guess. But he can remember certain stuff. Anyway, I just think it's so funny. And so, they end up watching the trial of Gabriel because basically what happens is they start talking about the end of the world. And Gabriel's like, no, I'm not feeling it. And everyone's like, excuse me, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not
Yeah,
feeling it.
yeah,
So naturally, he gets in trouble for that. And at first, he's like thinking, okay, what are you going to do? Send me to hell? Like, fine, whatever, I'll take it. Which I feel like showed his hand a little bit too much. And of
yeah. Why
course,
would you just go, oh,
yeah,
send me to hell?
yeah, exactly. That does seem very odd. I mean, I don't know why he would think that. I'm like, the last angel who didn't do what they were told, you tried to burn in hellfire. So I cannot imagine you really thought you were going to get sent to hell. It doesn't seem like that's what you do anymore. It seems like that's kind of off the table. You did it once for, 33%, and everyone else, it's like, we got to find something else. This ain't working,
Yeah,
which is odd to me, but like, whatever. So, of course, I almost couldn't remember his name. The Metatron is like, no, we're not doing that because once, to do it once, that makes for a good story. But to do it twice, it starts to look like there's a problem here. And it's
yeah,
like, there's a problem here. The call's coming from inside the house.
yeah.
You've had two angels now who have fallen in love with demons. Like, maybe you need to look into this, but at least two. There could be more. Back at the bookshop, they're still kind of dealing with the demons. Eventually, once they've run out of encyclopedias, they decide they have to take a little more drastic action. So Aziraphale decides to, this is where we learn that he has a halo that he can
Yeah.
just kind of take out. And it looks like it's very, very painful for him. It's kind of a struggle. He's like, trying to get it off. I do think it's funny.
At first, I was trying to figure out what the hell is he doing.
Yeah, exactly. I was
I'm
too.
like,
I was like, what is
is his
going on
brain
here?
exploding?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is like, what is going on here? I don't know what this is supposed to be. And I do kind of love to, we were talking about this in the first recording. We were like, why didn't you? Because they say you're only supposed to do it when you're in war footing. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you do this during the first end of the world or some shit? I don't know. Obviously, it didn't come up. I do think it's funny that it
Yeah.
comes up now.
Yeah.
So, of course, he takes it out. And then what I find so funny is you're kind of like, okay, what's he going to do with this? Is he going to like throw it like a discus or something? Like what? And then he just like slowly tosses it and it just gently floats down. And then you think, okay, is it going to explode when it hits the ground? No, doesn't do anything. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. And then we see one of the demons, I think it's Eric again, slowly go up to it and like touches it with their foot, and then everything blows up. I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense as much as anything else that could have happened there. But it actually knocks out all of the demons, which I think is super funny. And then in heaven, we get the kind of siren of, something's gone down. And everyone's like, what's going on? And Seracriel's like, I think your friend just declared war on hell, which I think is so funny. So, of course, that means all of the angels and Crowley have to, not all of them, but all the ones that matter, have to get in the elevator. I love the look on Michael's face in this scene because everyone else has kind of been passive, but Michael just looks pissed. She's like, motherfucker, I knew something was wrong about you. And then, of course, the angel facade dissolves and, we see Crowley looking very smug and Michael's just like, I'm so fucking mad. I love it. I love to see Michael pissed off.
Same.
You know what, but they're not a likable character. So like
No.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So they all go into the bookshop. Crowley kind of sees that Shax is like asleep on the couch. I kind of have to wonder, like, did she get blown to the couch or did Aziraphale just very kindly take her over? Either way, it's very nice if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And Crowley's like, what the fuck happened here? And Aziraphale's like, I did. And Crowley's like, what was that? And Aziraphale's like, I did the bit with the halo. And he looks so impressed. He's like laughing, giggling, like he's living his best life.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone else is like, no, this is a problem. So then we've got the angels, Dagon and Furfur for some reason, and Beelzebub come up from hell, and they're like, okay, clearly there's going to be a war now. And Crowley's like, no. You sent a bunch of idiots to attack a bookshop. Like, you don't get to declare war. Let's not be dramatic about this. But we also see that at one point in heaven, when Crowley was watching, Gabriel's trial and all that, he noticed that Gabriel was writing something on the box that he brings
Yeah.
in. And so, Crowley grabs the box, he flips it over, knocks everything out. I'm sure Aziraphale's like, can you stop throwing shit around in my bookshop? Like, Jesus Christ.
It was already a mess.
Yeah, right. And so what's written on the bottom is, I am in the fly. And so Crowley is like, what? I wonder what that means. And he goes to Beelzebub, like, hey, this is your specialty, flies. And Beelzebub's like, there's only one fly here. And so they summon it over and tell Gabriel, hey, open it. It's a container fly. And it's, this is the scene with a fly goes into his eye. It's very horror movie. It's very gross. I don't care for this kind of body horror. But then we get kind of the revelation of what's been going on all this time. And we learn that at least over the past 5 years, I would say, since Armageddon, Gabriel and Beelzebub have been meeting in secret and kind of slowly falling for one another.
So cute. Another romance where you're like,
if it was anyone else but Gabriel, I think I would be into it more.
For a little bit, yes, I agree.
I'm not about it.
I am not about it, but
I do think it's funny though. Like, the whole thing is like they, fell in love in 5 years, and it's taken 6,000 years for Aziraphale and Crowley to even get as far as they have. It's like, guys, come on, get it together. But I love that at first when they decide to meet up after Armageddon, Gabriel's like, who are you? And Beelzebub's like, come on, it's me, Beelzebub. Like, what the fuck do you want? And because it's this running gag that it's a new actress playing the character.
So new face.
Yeah, so it's a new face, who this? I do think it's funny. And,
wasn't the very first bar that they met at was
that the American bar?
No.
Oh.
No. It's the one.
No, it's not the pub in.
No, not the pub near the bookshop. No. The Resurrectionist.
No,
it's not.
It is. No, it's not the first time. They met in a different pub the first time.
Did they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they meet very briefly and they both say, hey, Armageddon was a pain in the ass. We don't want to do this again. And so they decide to kind of make their own little arrangement, actually, not to let, that ever happen again, because it was embarrassing. It was a pain in the ass. It wasn't worth the effort. And, they kind of say, okay, well, we have no reason to ever meet again. But of course they do end up meeting again. One of the pubs they meet in is like a American pub. They've got the American money on the walls, and they've got the American
license plates.
You can always remember that word, and I apparently cannot. And that's the pub where they first hear the song every day. And Beelzebub says they enjoy the song, and Gabriel's like, I don't know what a song is.
Yes.
And so they hear it and they enjoy it. And then when they meet up the third time, I think, is the Resurrectionist pub.
Because he goes to the bartender.
Yeah.
That's when he orders the beer and the crisps.
Beer and the crisps. And then, makes the song change to Every Day. And it was funny because Beelzebub's like, oh, did you change that song? It kind of becomes their song. Yeah. And that's when Beelzebub gives them the fly that's a container fly, and it's like, hey, you never know when you're going to need it, which I think was very convenient. And then Gabriel's like, oh, no one's ever given me a gift before. And so it's very romantic, but also like, I don't care. I don't want it. I don't like Gabriel. So I
love when he takes her to see himself in the
statue.
Oh yeah,
that is funny.
Oh my God.
Because Crowley called it. He said, I bet you he comes to look at this.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel's like, hey. And actually,
I want to show you something.
Yeah, he takes Beelzebub to see the statue of himself before they go to the Resurrectionist, because it's in the same place. Yeah. And I love that there is kind of a look on Beelzebub's face that's like, pride's a sin, buddy. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, we need to go. This is too much.
You're
for
so
me.
into yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, okay. Someone's got to be into him. But anyway, apparently Beelzebub is. I don't know. There's no accounting for taste. Let's say. Anywho, so of course, we get this whole thing, blah, 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 blah. Gabriel gets his memory back, and it seems to be implied that the reason nobody knew who he was because his memory wasn't there. It was less like Aziraphale
Yeah.
and Crowley's miracle. I feel like it had to have played some role. I don't know. I guess it's kind of up in the air. Then, of course, at first Gabriel sees Aziraphale. He's, happy to see him, but again, doesn't say thank you. Doesn't, he's not that appreciative. Like,
No.
it's like, okay, I guess some things never change. And then he sees the angels and he's like, oh, what are you guys doing here? Like, la la la. And then he sees the demons and he's like, oh, okay, you guys are here too. And then he sees Beelzebub and he's like, very clearly in love, blah, 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 gross. And I love
Blah, 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 gross.
I love that Beelzebub is like, what were you doing? What were you thinking? And Gabriel's like, well, I was trying to come to you, but I got lost. I forgot. And Beelzebub's like, well, I think Aziraphale took care of you better than I could have.
Mm-hmm.
And still nobody says thank you. But anyway, I digress. So then, the demons and angels start fighting over like, okay, what gets to happen? Do they
Yeah.
go to heaven and go on trial? Do they go to hell and go on trial there because they've decided that they're traitors? I will say, I love the line where Beelzebub says, we just found something worth more to us than choosing sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a cute line.
So isn't it in this group setting where the Metatron comes down in human form and everyone's like,
it's soon. Well, basically what has to happen first is, Maggie hears the love story and she's like, oh, that's so sweet.
okay,
And then the angels realize
Stop.
that there's humans there and they're like, what are humans doing here? Someone turn them into salt. And Srek like, I'm on it. And Crowley's like, no, 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 no. It's okay. I will get rid of them.
Yeah.
So he takes Maggie and Nina out and is like, thank you for all your hard work. Get the fuck out. And so
Try to forget about anything.
yeah, exactly. So Nina opens up her coffee shop because, of course, she meant to do that for a while. And she has a line forming, which includes, yes, the Metatron, but also Mrs. Sandwich, who we love, we stan in this household. Anyway, and I love that when the Metatron does get up to the front of the line, Nina's like, listen, I've had a very long night. I have not slept. I will make fun of you if I don't like your order. It's such a shady thing to say, and it's
but
so
it's
funny.
probably something that maybe someone at a local coffee shop would want to say.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love that though. I will make fun of you if I don't like your order. And so he orders an oat milk latte with 4 pumps or something of almond syrup. And so we were talking about this the first time we recorded it. Almond syrup is such a very specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine it tastes like much of anything. It's a really weird thing. And so I kind of have to assume that there's something more to that. And the only 2 things I could think of is that I did research at one point. Almonds are at least 6,000 years old. So they've been cultivated at least as long as Aziraphale and Crowley have been on Earth. And famously, almonds supposedly either
mask.
It's the same smell as cyanide or it could mask the smell of cyanide, which I think is interesting because you could just say, oh, it's almonds, not cyanide.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we know cyanide would not do anything to an angel, but one has to assume, it would get them drunk, presumably, because we know how laudanum affected Crowley. I know, shut up. I knew. I was like, fuck. We know how laudanum affected Crowley, and I kind of have to feel like, is there something to this? Did he do something to it? What does this all mean? Like, there's got to be something more. It's such a specific...
Because we're not trusting him at this point.
Well, no, not at all. But it's such a specific thing. Like, almond syrup is not a typical syrup.
No.
So anyway, he goes into the bookshop. He's got his coffee in hand. And we see, the angels are kind of like, I'm sorry, who the fuck are you? Because he comes in and he's like, y'all are being dumb.
Yeah.
What the fuck's going on? And I love that none of them recognize him. It does kind of seem like Seraquiel might recognize him, but for the most part, no one seems to recognize him. And so he turns to Crowley and he's like, you, demon, do you know who I am? And this is the one time where Crowley actually does know who someone is, and only because he just saw him like 10 minutes ago. I think that's the extent of his goldfish brain memory.
Yeah. Goldfish brain. That's hilarious.
Thank you. So they're like, and I think it's Aziraphale who's like, oh shit, it's the Metatron. And he's like, yeah. And all the angels are like, oh fuck, are we in trouble? And he's like, I mean, no, but also get the fuck out of here. You're embarrassing yourself.
Because he told them to go.
Yeah. So I don't remember if it was this moment. Was it before the Metatron came in? where there had been all the kind of arguing, and Aziraphale's like, well, why don't we ask Gabriel and Beelzebub what they want to
Yeah.
do? I don't remember. Anyway, there's a point where they're like, why don't we ask them what they want? And they're like, we don't care, wherever you are is my heaven, wherever you are is my hell, which I do. That's very cute. I will say that. That's a very romantic line. I like that. And so, of course, they fuck off together to God knows where.
Fuck off together.
What would you call it?
No,
And so,
that I guess.
the Metatron sends the angels away. They all leave. The demons all leave too, because they decide that now that Beelzebub's gone, anyone can kind of have their job. And
well, I mean, Beelzebub says to Shax,
yeah,
as Shax is saying,
you're a traitor.
You're a traitor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She
and
goes,
Beelzebub's like, hey,
hello.
We've got, there's an opening in hell. Why don't you go fill it, jackass? Like very that. And so Shax leaves. They leave. Then we get kind of the very strange moment. And this is part of the last 15 that is the most stressful part of this entire thing. And it's basically where the Metatron is like, hey, here's this coffee. Are you going to drink it? I think that's a very suspicious line, too, when he hands it over and he's like,
Yeah.
You going to drink it? Aziraphale's like, I guess. And then he's like, okay, we need to have a talk. And Aziraphale turns
he's like, you're human. Isn't this a drink that you would like?
Yeah. Well, and he goes, we need to have a talk. And Aziraphale looks to Crowley, and Crowley's like, I mean, whatever, it can't get any weirder. And I'm like, famous last words, babe. Famous last words. So, basically what happens is Crowley starts putting the bookshop together while Aziraphale and the Metatron are gone. It's really kind of cute. And then, you've got he says, like, I think after this, Aziraphale and I need to go for a very long breakfast at the Ritz. And Mira's like, oh, that sounds exciting. And Crowley's like, no. We need us time, which does not include you. And I'm like, oh, damn, girl. Yay. He said, you can leave too, bitch. Yeah. Like, we are not doing us this.
Time.
Which, like, it's such a cute thing. Mm-hmm. But it's also like, you're killing me here. We get little snippets of the conversation with the Metatron, but not really all that much, because they're kind of saving it for later. But basically, he's given Aziraphale an offer. And here's what's confusing. Because in the beginning, he says, like, you don't have to say yes now. Take time to think about it. And then, like, a minute later, he's like, oh, well, go tell your friend the good news. And it's like, oh, what just happened here?
Yeah.
How did we go from you don't have to decide right away to go tell your friend?
Well, I mean, he does ask, he is talking about needing to fill Gabriel's spot.
But that's not until, we don't see that until later.
Oh.
When they started,
that's right.
Because there is a point, too, where Nina and Maggie decide that they need to talk to Crowley while Aziraphale is still talking to the Metatron.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go in, they talk to Crowley, they say, look, you guys have been talking, but you never communicate with each other. You just needed the push that we need. And so that's kind of the moment where it seems like Crowley has decided he's going to say what he needs to say once and for all. He's going to say how he feels. He's going to put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And God, this is such a heartbreaking scene, because Aziraphale comes back. He's so excited. And Crowley's like, look, I need to talk, because if I don't start this now, I'm never going to get started. Like, just let me speak. And so, he starts to kind of get it out. And Aziraphale's like, hold that thought. I've got something big. And you're like, oh God, this isn't going to be good.
Mm-mm.
And of course it's not, because Aziraphale announces that the Metatron offered him Gabriel's job. And what's more, he offered him to make Crowley an angel again, which I kind of am suspicious of right off the bat, because
Same.
I don't know that he necessarily has that power. B, I kind of have to assume that no one in heaven would like that at all. So there's so many like red flags that are just blaring all around.
Of course, Aziraphale doesn't see them.
I think he wants to believe. Does. Yeah, he wants to believe that things are better. But Crowley really, I think that was a slap in the face for him. He's like, I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah.
Please tell me you told him to fuck off. And Aziraphale's like, no. And Crowley's like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. And so then, we kind of get this monologue from Crowley where he's basically like, look, I'm just going to say what I've got to say, and that's going to be the end of it. He's like, we've been together a long time. We've been friends for a long time. We've always had each other's back. we've always been able to depend on each other. And he doesn't quite get it out, but the gist of it is like, hey, look, I want to spend the rest of our lives together. If Beelzebub and Gabriel can do it and go off together, then why can't we?
Yeah.
And Aziraphale is just like, no, like, work with me, come with me, like we
can make it better,
we can make a difference.
Yeah.
And Crowley's like, that's never gonna happen. And then he kind of does say, like, listen, when heaven ends life as we know it, it's going to be just the same as if hell had done it. Like, they are both awful. I don't know why you don't see that still. And it's such a tragic moment. And there's all this kind of like tension. And finally, Crowley's like, I just can't do this. Like, I'm not going to be an angel with you. It's not going to happen. This is ridiculous. And so he goes to leave. And Aziraphale's like, I need you, please, don't go. And we get the line of like, listen, there's no nightingales playing. Like, this is the worst decision you could have ever made. And then we get probably the most heart-wrenching of heart-wrenching scenes, which is where, as a last-ditch, desperate effort, Crowley, brings them together and kisses him. And it's very, very passionate and emotional. And like, he's like grabbing him by the jacket. It's kind of like a homage to the scene in season 1 where he had pushed him up against the wall. And he's like, but he's holding on to him for dear life instead. So instead of pushing him back, he's pulling him forward, which is very like, oh God, straight, just fucking knife dagger to the heart. Yeah, dagger to the heart. Very, very emotional. And there is a point where you kind of see like Aziraphale is like standing on his tiptoes. He's really, it's just heartbreaking. Of course, he pulls away. Aziraphale is like in tears. And, it's been explained that the kind of look on his face is like shock, but also like, do that again. But of course, that's not what comes out of his mouth. What comes out of his mouth is like, I forgive you. And Crowley's like, you know what? I'm done. And so he leaves. And the Metatron comes back and he's like, yeah, how did that go? And Aziraphale's like, not great. And so he's like, do you have anything you need? And of course, Aziraphale hesitates for a moment. He's like, I don't know, maybe this isn't a good idea. But something seems to click in his brain and he changes his mind. Someone pointed out that he does look out the window at where Crowley would be several times during this scene of like him talking to the Metatron and deciding if he's going to stay or go. And ultimately he decides to go. He puts on a fake smile and he follows him out. And, we see that Crowley is still standing by the Bentley, still waiting for him, hoping that he will at some point come to his senses.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. And it just, that's what I think makes everyone feel like there's something wrong here, because there's no logical reason for him not to come to his senses. There's no logical reason that he would go with the
like
Metatron
something
like this.
Is already happened with the drink, because even when you see the look on his face when he's in the elevator, as they're showing the split screen, and it's like something's clicking in Aziraphale's head.
Something's weird. It seems like he doesn't know who he is. The smile is very manic. It's just it's very odd. And that's one of the things I was going to say too, is like, we get this moment where he goes into the elevator, he puts on the fake smile, Crowley watches, he gets into his Bentley. We get like a second of the Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square playing, which some people think was like maybe a message from Aziraphale saying like, don't give up on me yet. I don't know.
Aww.
Maybe they had a plan that's kind of not communicated. It's hard to know. There's so many.
They were so good at the. That's a good idea, because they're nobody suspected when they switched themselves.
Yeah. There's always so much speculation of what could it mean? What could this be? There's got to be something more here. And of course, we still have kind of a long wait until season 3. So we have no idea what any of this is. And it's very frustrating, I have to say. But yeah, like you said, there is that split screen. Crowley is clearly devastated, but he's not crying. We've seen him really devastated, like after the bookshop was burned down and he thought Aziraphale was dead. This, I think he's just kind of like, he's pissed, he's heartbroken. It's a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
I love that before he gets in the Bentley, though, he does kind of like look around. Like, he looks to see Nina. She's clearly busy, so he can't bug her. Maggie's asleep, so he kind of, I think, feels like he's kind of alone.
Yeah.
He's got no one he can talk to about it. So
Yeah.
he just gets in the Bentley and drives off.
Yeah.
Where he's going, we don't know yet.
Mm-mm.
I certainly have my own theories. I'm sure a lot of people have theories of where he goes. I feel like he's going to go back to the bookshop because that's kind of more home than his flat has been for a long, long time. So, you know, I don't think he's going to go there, but who can say? But yeah, so it kind of just ends on that cliffhanger. And I distinctly remember I had watched the season in like one shot when it first premiered, and it was like 4 a.m. when that scene happened. And it took everything in me not to scream, "You can't just end it there!" I was so upset. I was so devastated. But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the whole season 2. That is all she wrote. I cannot believe it. So, what did you think of the season overall? That, you know, it's a short season, shorter episodes. Obviously, it's still 6 episodes, but they're shorter than the previous season.
I mean, overall, just like season 1, it had its great moments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much I felt like a lot of people with the minisodes, and you, of course.
Yeah.
It didn't really add anything.
Some of them worked better than others.
Yes.
I think it kind of adds to their story and their history, maybe. Some of them, I think, work better than others. Obviously, I think the 1941, most of that works. I think some of the elements of the zombies do not work. I don't know why that was added. I don't know why it was played for a laugh either. Like, that was a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I do think in general, I like how it kind of explains a lot of their history.
Yeah.
I like seeing how Aziraphale came to enjoy food. That was kind of entertaining. Even though I don't like that episode all that much. I don't like the whole Job storyline. I'm really looking forward to season 3. Obviously, you know, we've got a minute, so we got to kind of figure out what I got to figure out what content I'm going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys have any thoughts of things you'd like to see from me going forward, I'd love to hear them, because we are out of reviews. We are out of these episodes. We can always review other shows that we enjoy. I
like
still
Traitors.
I don't. We could review Traitors. Yeah,
I thought we talked about it.
I don't remember. Well, we've talked about reviewing Hell of a Boss. We've talked about reviewing Has Been Hotel.
Yes.
Possibly Traitors. I mean, hey, we can review whatever you guys want to see. We will review it, because we're just that kind. And now speaking of Has Been, now that that's over, I'm hoping that soon we will get a new Hell of a Boss. Fingers crossed. I'm so excited.
Yes.
But yeah, that was the video. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like this video, comment down below. Tell me what was your favorite part of the episode, how you feel about the infamous last 15. You can also subscribe to this channel and become a member of this channel. We have 2 tiers, the Ineffable and the R-Side tier. The R-Side tier does get a little extra. You get the early access to videos. You get behind the scenes content. I want to start doing lives, so I think that would be good for the R-Side tier. You can also follow me on Patreon, patreon.com/NarcissaDeVille. That's also going to have some behind the scenes content and specialty content that is just for the Patreon. And until next time, stay devilish and see you next Tuesday. I really hope this recorded anything, because at the very least we have audio.
A podcast?
What was that?
I don't
44
know.
minutes. Wow, we did that fast.